I'm Anna from beautygirlsmom.com. Today we're going to do something a little bit different, even for me. I don't cook often, and the things that I do cook tend to be super easy and super fast, so that I don't spend a lot of time in the kitchen. This recipe actually is my mom's, and it is a recipe for a kid-friendly chili. Now I call it kid-friendly because you're not going to find the spiciness that you find in a lot of chilies. This is definitely one that you can put on the table in front of the youngest child and they're not going to turn their nose up. It's not going to be too spicy for them. There's not going to be any issues. So let me first tell you what I have in the chili. We're going to start with ground beef. I buy the Kirkland organic ground beef at Costco because I think it's healthier for the kids to have the organic ground beef, and it's a little less expensive than buying it in the regular supermarket. We're going to dice up an onion and some sweet bell peppers. You can use any color you want. These just happen to be on sale today, so I got the tricolor peppers. We use tomato soup, dark or light kidney beans, doesn't matter, whatever your family prefers, some crushed tomatoes, chili powder, and salt and pepper to taste. We also start with a little bit of olive oil to do our browning of the ground meat and our vegetables. Okay, so the first thing you do is you're going to take some olive oil and put it into a large skillet, just about a tablespoon or so, to help you saute your vegetables. You're then going to chop your peppers. We use for one size of the recipe, which is a pretty good pot full, we use 2 to 3 bell peppers. I'm going to be doubling the recipe today so that we can put some away in the freezer. This is an excellent freezer meal, so I'm actually going to use 5 peppers. You do want to take all the seeds out. I also try and take the vein out of the middle. And if you're like me, you get to about the 3rd pepper and you are crying for Rachel Ray's team to come in here and just do all the rest of the chopping and dicing. Okay. Once you have all of your peppers diced, and when I dice the peppers, I try and do like a small, something that would easily fit into a child's mouth. You don't have to worry about cutting anything up. They're also easier to hide. You don't have kids saying, ew, yuck, what's that giant thing floating in my chili? It's definitely easier to sneak it in if the pieces are little. It also sautés a little bit quicker. Once you have all the peppers chopped up, you're going to move on to your onion. For a single recipe, I use 1 medium onion. So for the recipe that I'm making to double it and put in the freezer, I'm going to use 2 onions. This, by the way, is a Cutco knife that my husband has been told so many times in the last 2 years needed to be sharpened. So it's a little dull. So I think he keeps it that way because when I get frustrated with him, he knows I can't hurt him with the dull knife in the kitchen. Okay, you're going to dice your onion kind of fine. This is a tip that I did not learn until much later in life. My stepmother taught me to cut the onion so that it kind of just dices itself. You can see that it kind of already makes the little pieces. Okay, once all of your vegetables are chopped, the peppers and the onions, you're just going to go ahead and put them in the warm pan with your olive oil. And these are just going to saute. We're going to sweat this down. And this is going to take a few minutes, especially if you double the recipe like I did. This could take, 5-10 minutes. I do it over medium so that I make sure not to burn anything on the bottom, which gives kind of an odd flavor to the chili. But this certainly does look pretty in the pan. All your onions and peppers are sauteing down. What I like to do is go ahead and start filling my stock pot with the other ingredients. So we use the large can for a single recipe, 20 ounces of crushed tomatoes. And again, I'm doubling so that we have some for the freezer. If you prefer, you can absolutely use whole tomatoes and crush them by hand, whatever you're more comfortable with. Again, I like quick and easy, so I go with the crushed tomatoes. It doesn't change the texture of the chili that much. And especially for some little kids that don't like the chunks of tomato in there, they think that's an odd texture, the crushed tomato works better. I also use the 40 ounce, I think it's 40.5 ounces of kidney beans. We're gonna get those started in our pot. I don't drain the juice off of any of this. I leave the juice all right in there. And then we use a can of tomato soup. I happen to like Campbell's. And just to increase the liquid, you're going to take the can and do the can of water as if you were making the soup. It also helps you to get the last bit of tomatoey goodness out of your can. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get that started while I'm doing the vegetables and the ground beef. So our vegetables are just about ready to be transferred into the stock pot with the tomatoes and the beans. I want to point out I haven't yet seasoned anything, and that may seem a little bit strange. What I find is when I start seasoning from the beginning, like I season the peppers and the onions as I cook them, and I season the tomatoes as they start to simmer, is that I end up with a lot of salt, a lot of overly seasoned soup, and kind of bland beef. I do all of my seasoning in the ground beef as I'm cooking that. I find, first of all, you're simmering that ground beef in the stock pot with everything else for a good 2 hours. All of the goodness that you put into it is going to come out and it's going to go right into your stock pot, so it's all going to be good. I also don't want this to be spicy. I want my kids to enjoy this. For the longest time when Bridget was little, we used to tell her that it was hot dog and hamburger soup. We used to call the kidney beans the hot dogs and the ground meat the broken up hamburgers, because if we said it was chili, for her it sounded like it was something that was going to be spicy. This is not going to be spicy. So you don't want to season as you go and then end up with something that you can't take back any of the heat. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour these vegetables right into that pot. Okay, so we're going to do about 2 pounds of ground beef. It doesn't really matter whether you use lean ground meat. I wouldn't use extra lean. All the flavor is not there. I also don't rinse my pot out after I've cooked the onions and the peppers, because all of that flavor will stay in your pan and infuse into your meat. Now this is where you're going to hate me. If you've ever seen my grandmother's ravioli with Mo Rocca, you've seen these awesome grandmothers, and they talk about their family recipes, things that their mothers taught them and their grandmothers taught them how to cook. And they seem to have a pretty good handle on how many cups of this, how many teaspoons of that. My family didn't do that. My family just said some salt, some pepper. You're really going to have to use this to taste. I would say for 2 pounds of ground meat, I would use about a teaspoon of salt. And again, I'm doubling this recipe. This is an awesome recipe to put in your freezer. It's great on a fall night. You can just pop it right in your microwave if you're running late coming home from work. I also like to get all of the salt into my ground meat before I add any of the other seasoning. Okay, I'm also going to add some pepper. Again, it's pepper to taste. I would say for 2 pounds of ground meat, maybe a half a teaspoon of pepper. Again, you're not wanting to make this spicy, just flavorful so that your children will actually eat this. And the last seasoning that I'm going to add is the chili powder. Now this is really a to taste kind of thing. If your kids like spicy food and they can do spicy food, definitely put a little bit more. But to 2 pounds of ground meat, I generally use about 1.5 teaspoons of chili powder. Again, a little bit more because I've doubled the recipe. And you just want to make sure that you mix all of those seasonings really well into your ground meat as it's browning. So you'll notice 2 things about our ground meat. The first one is no pink. I know you're going to cook it for 2 more hours in the stock pot, but you still want to put it in thoroughly cooked. You don't want to leave any pink at all. The second thing you'll notice, I break it up very small. Again, if you have a little one at home, especially one that has new teeth and is just learning how to chew, this is something that you can put down in front of them and they can pick up with their fingers, but it's not going to be a choking hazard. Everything is real small, everything is soft, and will be easy for little ones who are just starting to eat table food, transition into table food. I also want to point out that chili was one of the foods when I had my gastric bypass surgery that not only doctors, but other people that had had surgery told me was a really good food to start eating. Again, the meat is broken into little tiny small pieces, so it's easy to go down into your newly altered stomach. And there's really nothing else in the pot that's chunky or difficult to eat. So once you make sure that all of the meat is broken up and there is no pink, you're going to drain off all of the oil before you add it to your stock pot. So before I add my meat, the first thing I do, only because of the way the size of my burners are on my stove, is I move the pot of the simmering tomatoes and beans over to the larger burner that I can adjust a little bit easier than I can the smaller burners. Next, I'm going to take the drained ground beef and I'm just going to add it right into the pot. So once the ground meat is in your pot, you're going to go ahead and give it a good stir to make sure that everything is incorporated. You'll see a lot of steam coming up off of it. That's because we've already pre-cooked, while we were doing our meats, we already pre-cooked all of the juices that were in here, the tomatoes, the beans, and everything else. And you just want to make sure that your ground meat is pretty much mixed in throughout. Next is the easy part. We're just going to grab our lid, pop it on there. Make sure our temperature is on low, and we're just gonna pretty much ignore it for about once we've got everything in here and we have the lid on, this is gonna sit here for an hour and just simmer. You wanna come back every once in a while and just stir it so that you know that it's not sticking on the bottom of your pan. Just check your temperature, make sure it isn't too hot and your chili is boiling, but you're pretty much gonna leave this alone for an hour. Now I know I said I like things that are quick and easy. This to me is quick. Even though it's gonna sit on my stovetop for 2 hours now, it really only took me about 20 minutes to assemble all of my ingredients and get this pot on the stove. And now I can walk away from it. Except for checking it every 20 minutes or so, I can walk away and do something else in the house. I can read a book, I can watch a TV show, I can do something with the kids, I can do something with my husband. So it really is quick. Not only is it quick that way, but because I doubled my batch, I'm gonna have some of this left over in the freezer and I can take it out anytime during the week, pop it in the microwave, and it is a super fast 15-minute meal with a nice side salad, a crusty roll, and you're good to go. So we are totally done now. The chili has been simmering for 2 hours and it is ready to serve. We are fortunate to live right down the street from a bakery and we get fresh bread whenever we want it. They're open 7 days a week, so shout out to Del Buono's Bakery. And this is really all I do to serve it up. I take a nice fresh bread, piece of roll, I put it on the side of the plate. And then I just scoop out a bowl of the chili. You can see it thickened up as it simmered. And this is totally ready to go. Now, I did use the organic ground meat, which is a little bit more expensive than if you just buy ground meat in the regular store. So the entire portion, nice sized bowl, a nice roll with butter, is about $3 per person. Again, using the organic ingredients. So there it is. There's my weekend cooking that will do us at least 2 or 3 meals. Thank you very much. I'm Anna from beautygirlsmom.com, and we will see you real soon. Don't forget to subscribe.